Hey, Mr. Mayor, you're live.
All right, thank you. Good morning, everybody. It is August the 16th. Summer is almost over. I see people putting up their Christmas decorations. It's amazing how quickly the summer flies by, but we still have a couple of weeks. It is our executive committee, and I thank folks for joining us. I'm going to just confirm who we have with us. First of all, the duly deputized deputy, Deputy Mayor Tim Outhet.
Good morning, Mayor and colleagues. Happy to be here and coming to you from sunny and less humid Bedford.
Indeed. Former deputized Deputy Mayor, Councillor Blackburn.
Hello, everybody. Good morning. Welcome.
Awesome. Councillor Morse, how are you?
Very well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, all from Clayton Park.
Beautiful. Councillor Russell, who there may be listeners around the world who are tuning in today on CNN and BBC that aren't aware that you recently got married. Congratulations again. Councillor Russell, how are you doing?
Thank you very much. So far, everything is going well. Really enjoying time here in wonderful sunny Sackville. We have a concert series going on every weekend, and that's a whole pile of fun. I invite everybody to come out to that. So
Yes,
thank you.
indeed. We have concerts here at Grand Parade as well as Dartmouth. There's a fair bit of small gatherings of people and giving our musicians and cultural industries a chance to showcase. Boy, have we missed them for the last 17 months. Councillor Hensby, you might know about that on the Eastern Shore. How are you, sir?
Just fine, and I was also deputy mayor 13 years ago, so don't forget that. But before your time. But anyway, it was a great weekend on the Eastern Shore. We had the Seaside Festival in Sheet Harbor with parade and everything, and it was great to have some live entertainment. The Stanfields playing at a sold-out audience in Sheet Harbor, so it was a great time.
That's awesome. I made the mistake one time in Boston at the tree lighting of offering to buy drinks for the Stanfields, and I had to mortgage my house before I realized how deeply I'd gotten into it. They're a great group of people. David, who was the deputy mayor just before you and after you back earlier in the century?
Brad Johns was just before me, and after me was, I can't remember who was after me, so I have to check that one.
All right.
I want to thank Steve Adams, because around the time I joined, Steve Adams was councillor 12 or was deputy 12 years ago. I can't remember.
Are you checking it, David?
What was that?
He thinks Steve Adams. Did you hear that? Might have been after you.
No, Steve was before me. He was before
Brad?
Before Brad, and Stevie Adams and Brad and myself.
Oh.
Can't recall who's after me. You have to check the board outside your office.
Maybe Councillor Karsten or somebody. Okay, colleagues, Councillor Mason has sent regrets. Jacques Dubé, how are you today, sir? You're at home. You made it out the other day on your little machine in spite of your broken foot to the Bonne Fête Acadienne, the Acadian national holiday. How are you doing today?
Very well, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, everyone.
John Trays, are you with us on a boat somewhere in the South Pacific, perhaps?
Off the boat now, Mayor. Thank you, and good day, committee members.
Awesome. And Phoebe Rye, our Deputy Municipal Clerk, is with us. I see her there.
Nice to see you, Mr. Mayor.
We also are joined by Jill McGillicuddy, who does great work on this committee, and I think Ian McLean, our clerk as well. Annie Sherry, I see as well. Thank you for all the support. First thing, folks, we're going to look at the approval of the minutes of our meeting on July the 12th, if somebody wants to consider moving those.
I'll move those. Lisa?
Moved by Councillor Blackburn, seconded by Deputy Mayor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Minutes are approved. Let's look at the order of business. I ask for a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved, Councillor Russell.
Moved by Councillor Russell, second by Councillor Morse. All in favor of the order of business as proposed?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? That will be the order of business that we follow. That passes. Business arising, I see none. Calls for declaration of conflict of interest? Seeing no rush of hands, motions of reconsideration, rescission, deferred business, tabled matters, we have none. Clerk, do we have any correspondence?
Yes, we do. There has been correspondence received regarding item 10.3.2 on today's agenda, and that has been circulated to all members of the committee.
Thank you very much. 10.3.2 is the presentation by Jim Cormier of the Retail Council of Canada. Petitions, colleagues? We have two presentations this morning at Executive Committee. The first is from Haneen Al-Numan of the Canadian Muslim Women, Discrimination, Sexism, and Misperceptions. Do we have Ms. Al-Numan with us this morning?
Sorry. Yes, we do. We do have her with us, and we also have a PowerPoint presentation that we'll be displaying on her behalf as well.
Okay, so Haneen Al-Numan, I welcome you. Can you hear us? I wonder if you might be on mute, perhaps.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Good morning. Nice to have you with us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
The floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Haneen Al-Numan, and today I will be talking to you about some of the experiences of Muslim women and the opportunities that HRM has to create a more inclusive space. This is a very pressing topic, especially at the heels of the recent National Summit on Islamophobia. In developing this presentation, I have collaborated with some members of the Canadian Council for Muslim Women. To tell you a little bit more about myself, I am a law student in my final year at Dalhousie. I previously worked on policy initiatives for the Senate of Canada, and I'm currently a legal professional in training with a local Atlantic law firm. I also sit on HRM's Women's Advisory Committee. But first and foremost, I am a Muslim woman, and visibly so. Next slide, please. Muslim women in Canada are burdened with an extensive amount of discrimination within their own male-dominated community and outside of it in the larger context in Canada. For this reason, it is pivotal to listen to the experience of Muslim women from Muslim women themselves. The goal of this presentation is to provide you with insight into the lived experience of Canadian Muslim women, as well as highlight real action that HRM can take to help its constituents. With that said, I will delve right in. Next slide, please. On June 6, 2021, Talat, Salman, Madiha, Yumna, and Faiz Afzal were out for a late spring walk in London, Ontario. Just like all of us, during lockdown, walks in nature were cherished family time. This walk, however, ended with the murder of 4 of the 5 family members. Now, 9-year-old Faiz lives on as an orphan with serious physical injuries. This tragedy was driven by anti-Muslim hate, but it was also disproportionately experienced by Muslim women. 3 of the 4 individuals who were murdered were Muslim women. The threat of Islamophobia-based attacks and violence looms large among Canadian Muslim women and girls, who can be easily identified by their clothing. This is particularly pronounced for Black and other visibly Muslim women. The spate of hate-motivated attacks on Black Muslim women in hijabs in Alberta, as well as the ongoing harassment and abuse of visibly Muslim women, is clear evidence of this phenomenon. Next slide, please. Data from recent years shows that every time there is a hate-motivated attack on Muslims, there's always a spike in hate-motivated attacks on Canadian Muslims, particularly with assaults and harassments against Black and other visibly Muslim women. This was true after the attack on Muslims in Christchurch, New Zealand, the murders at the Islamic Center of Quebec, and the murder outside the mosque in Etobicoke. It has also certainly been proven true after the murders in London, Ontario, as there has been a significant increase in hate-motivated crimes on Black Muslim women who wear a headscarf in Alberta and in Hamilton, Ontario. According to the National Council of Canadian Muslims, more Muslims have been killed in targeted hate attacks in Canada than any other G7 country in the past 5 years because of Islamophobia. But of course, egregious attacks such as this one are preceded by smaller acts of harassment and discrimination. Next slide, please. We have a few statistics that can help us understand discrimination that Muslim women face, but it is quite difficult to find these statistics as it hasn't been covered well. But some organizations, such as the Canadian Council for Muslim Women, has begun documenting this. According to a recent report from the Canadian Council of Muslim women encountered more difficulties in the labor market than any other demographic. As well, in 2013, a Statistics Canada General Social Survey on Social Identity showed that across all different types of discrimination, Black Canadian Muslim women reported the highest percentage of discriminatory experience. Next slide, please. So not only do we have statistics, but there are also real stories from real women that are available to us. The Canadian Council for Muslim Women created the Digital Anti-Racism Education Project, where women, girls, trans, and non-binary individuals were invited to share their experiences of Islamophobia. I invite you to review this report I've attached to this presentation. It highlights a trend of discrimination at the workplace, as well as harassment and assault on public property, and demeaning racist stereotypes faced by Muslim women in Canada on a daily basis. For example, one woman shared that a stranger tried to pull her headscarf and choke her with it as she stepped on the bus, and no one intervened. I can also tell you from my own personal experience that many of the situations outlined align fully with my own experiences. Next slide, please. So what can you do? Now I'm going to provide you with a few recommendations. I'll provide specific reasons on why these are likely viable, good initiative steps for HRM to take. I have forwarded and linked the reports written by the Canadian Council for Muslim Women, as well as the National Council of Canadian Muslims, all presented to the federal government at the National Summit for Islamophobia. It is also worth noting that these recommendations have been specifically drafted for municipalities, so fall within the preview of that power. Next slide, please. So the first recommendation discusses public awareness and using public awareness campaigns to tackle misinformation and misperceptions. Public awareness campaigns are both preventative and relatively cost-effective. Constituents often look up to their local government for leadership. For this reason, it is important that HRM consider dedicating funding and resources to correct misinformation and misperceptions of Muslims, and specifically Muslim women. This can be in the form of anti-Islamophobia public awareness campaigns, or even just celebrating the accomplishments of Muslim women in HRM. For example, many believe that Muslim women are oppressed and uneducated, when in reality, a study has shown that in comparison to all other Canadian women, Canadian Muslim women have twice as many postgraduate degrees. So let's celebrate those accomplishments in our city. Next slide, please. The second recommendation is introducing bystander training for HRM staff. If we think about it, a lot of our daily life is on HRM property and using HRM services. So for instance, taking the bus, walking through Point Pleasant, going to the Oval. For this reason, it is important that individuals working on those properties have training to step in when a constituent is being harassed. If staff are trained to appropriately step in when needed, this can serve as support for Muslim women in Halifax, as well to help them to feel safe in these spaces. This type of training also builds the same skills necessary for staff to safely intervene in other circumstances involving women or other minorities in general. Next slide, please. The third recommendation is introducing a specific initiative through the Office of Diversity and Inclusion to support women, specifically visibly Muslim women, who are struggling due to discrimination. The reality is that Muslim women struggle to find a resource or support in our municipality after facing a hate crime. Culturally competent service providers for Canadian Muslim women and girls experiencing gender-based violence are in short supply. For this reason, there is great value in introducing an initiative through the Office of Diversity and Inclusion that particularly focuses on supporting Haligonian Muslim women, on celebrating them and guiding them to the proper resources where they will be heard. Next slide, please. My fourth recommendation here that has been outlined is HRM should also consider looking to other municipalities to see how they have acted in the wake of these tragedies and implemented tangible changes to improving the life of their Muslim constituents. For example, the city of Mississauga has unanimously condemned anti-Muslim hate and committed to the following resolutions. And I also encourage HRM to consider resolving the same. First, They have resolved to actively work to review and implement recommendations that have been put forward in the National Action Summit on Islamophobia, all of which have been highlighted here. As well, the City of Mississauga resolved to mandate city staff to provide council with a report on the concrete actions that the city can take to combat anti-Muslim hate and racism. It is important for HRM to look to the federal government and other municipalities to learn and gauge how best to support its Muslim constituents. Next slide, please. The fifth and final recommendation, and I believe this particular recommendation is the most important one, is that I urge you to engage with Muslim women on anti-racism plans and initiatives. It is vital that any steps taken are done so collaboratively with Canadian Muslim women. Far too often, decision makers will fail to engage with the women who are directly impacted. Like any community, if we fail to take active steps to include women in the conversation, then we risk failing to address their concerns and issues. That concludes my presentation. I really appreciate the time that you have given me. I am more than happy to answer any questions. And yeah, Jill also has my contact information in case I'm not able to, if you have any questions later on.
Well, thank you very much for that presentation, Ms. Al-Nouman. We appreciate that and very much appreciate that you have specifically given us some recommendations that we as a city can take on. And both as councillors and also as staff, you've mentioned Diversity and Inclusion Office, and I don't think there's anybody here on that from that office, but I know that our CAO is on the call and that he will make sure that staff are also aware of this so that both politicians and staff can follow up on some of these recommendations. Particularly interested in some of the recommendations on bystander intervention, the response on the National Summit on Islamophobia that some other jurisdictions have followed up on. So those are things that I think that we can absolutely do. I saw John Trey or Jacques, our CAO, had popped up. I don't know, Jacques, if you wanted to speak to that.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Haneen, for your very well thought out presentation. I must say that I agree with everything you've said in your presentation, and I think the framework you put forward today in terms of recommendations are something that will certainly take back to my team and diversity and inclusion, led by Tracy Jones Grant, and and I know we actively participate as well with the Women's Advisory Committee. So I think to your point, bang on. We're actually going down the road of an anti-Black racism strategy, and of course we're actively engaged with that community in formulating that, both from an internal perspective and from an external perspective. But I see this as an additional, very important, critical opportunity to move the yardsticks forward in terms of the subject matter we're talking about today. So thank you for that, and we'll certainly be communicating with you and your colleagues as we move forward. After I speak with sure Tracy will reach out to you and start the engagement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's wonderful to hear. And please feel free to contact me at any time.
Thank you for that. You may know, I don't know if you know, Haneen, but we had a presentation maybe a couple of months ago about anti-Asian, and particularly anti-Asian gender-based hate. We hear about anti-Semitism on the rise, certainly still anti-LGBTQ and anti-Black racism. And I think that strengthening Canada's hate speech laws is also one of the things that we can all take action on, because it's not as strong as it should be. I'm going to go to Deputy Mayor Outset, who has a comment or question.
Thank you, and I wanted to thank the presenter, first of all, for a very good and sobering and important presentation. Just following up on your comments, Mike, and the CAOs, I don't know if Lisa or we or somebody needs to bring forward a motion about this at some point, or the Women's Advisory Commission, but based on committee, I meant to say, based on Jacques' comments, is this going to happen, or do we need some sort of a motion to come forward from executive to look into how we could implement these recommendations? So maybe either you could address this, Jacques, or maybe Lisa's planning to bring this forward. But I just thought I'd check if it would make it would be helpful to formalize this. I'd be certainly happy to bring it forward or to assist or to support it.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, through you, certainly we'll be coming back to this committee with a report and recommendation associated with this. I would say we'll take a few months before we get back to council with a report and recommendation on that. But if you wish to have a motion, that's fine. But that's what we'll be doing. We'll be coming back to council with a report and recommendation.
As long as it's not ending here, that's good, Jacques. So I'm happy to let that go. And as long as this is a starting point, not an ending point. So thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
I think as well, we can forward this presentation on to council, regional council, for their consideration as well. And, I think that we'll let the CAO put some thought into it, but also, when we had the anti-Asian, particularly the gender-based, I know the Councillor Blackburn had followed up with some recommendations upon reflection. So it's very useful to have this. I'm pleased that it is put further onto our radar so that we can consider it. After what happened in London, Ontario, the whole issue of Islamophobia has taken on greater awareness. It may not, it certainly isn't new, but a greater awareness across the country, and I think struck a whole lot of people in a way that made it a more important issue. So it's something we need to move on here as well, especially as our Muslim population has been growing, and in the last number of years to the benefit of the city. Okay, Deputy Mayor, did you want to sort of put a motion forward to forward the presentation to council?
Happy to do that. I'll move that we forward this presentation as an information item to regional council. So move.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Blackburn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. Haneen, was there anybody else that wanted to speak on it? I want to thank you very much for taking the time. I know we had you scheduled last month, and I'm glad you made it this month, and we look forward to further conversations with you and with the community.
Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you
very much for taking the time. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, colleagues, we have a second presentation this morning, and the presentation is with Jim Cormier, who many of us would know, who was the Atlantic Director of the Retail Council of Canada. Jim, are you you're with us? How are you?
Very well. Off mute there now. I think everybody can hear me.
Yeah, I think I can hear you. I assume everybody else can. Nice to see you, and thanks for joining us. I will turn the floor over to you, and you may have some people with you or potential guests with you for the presentation.
It's just me today.
Okay. All right. Jim Cormier, the Atlantic Director, Retail Council of Canada, and all-around well-known citizen. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. And thank you to the members of the Executive Standing Committee. I appreciate the opportunity. Just started off with wanting to ensure that folks understand, I wanted to chat a little bit and provide some of the perspective of retailers in this community with respect to the proposal for some of the tax changes that are going to be coming forward this fall. Understanding, of course, that some of this has already happened, the consultation over the last number of years. We're a one-person office, meaning me, handling all of Atlantic Canada. So not always able to be completely up to snuff on everything happening at a municipal level. Suffice it to say, though, the retail sector, at least through Retail Council of Canada, wasn't consulted on this. So, I was looking for an opportunity just to get a chance to send something in formally. I did send a letter in through. I hope you folks had a chance to take a look at it. And, we'd like to have an opportunity to have that distributed through to council if that's possible. So just really quickly, Retail Council of Canada, we represent about 45,000 storefronts from coast to coast. Everyone from your small independent Main Street retailer of 1 to 2 employees up through to the largest retailers in the world. We're also we have e-retailers, grocery, pharmaceutical. So We don't represent all retailers, but we represent a good chunk of them. In Nova Scotia, about 16 billion in sales annually. These are 2019 numbers, of course, before the pandemic hit. About almost 10 billion of that is core retail, which is the ones that you'd think of most often, so excluding, car parts and gasoline sales, that sort of thing. We're in every single community in the province. About 12% of the province's workforce, and about 2 billion annually in compensation paid to retail workers just in this province. So we do have a pretty large large swath throughout the province when it comes to what we provide. What we'd like to get across is that in looking at the proposal for the tax reform, obviously we're of two minds on this. The main message really for us is that a lot of what's there are some positives to our smaller independent retailers, even some of the mid-levels, where there could be some opportunity for some tax relief. So that would be appreciated. That said, it's really tough for us as an overall association to support a municipal taxation approach that would specifically target certain retail businesses. And again, I mentioned in the letter, I know it's a bit flippant, but the fact that the proposed highest tax rate, it's been labeled with a name that's commonly used to describe large mass merchant retailers, the big box zone. That sends a troubling message to our members that HRM is specifically targeting mass merchants, and we don't feel that that's fair or justifiable. Really, as I mentioned in the letter, if you're going to tax geographical areas like you have proposed, for big box and industrial at the higher rates for the biggest retailers, we don't feel it's fair and equitable. It could discourage development in higher taxed areas, and it provides a distinct advantage to mass merchant retailers that are doing business just outside of those zones. I can think of one of our good members. We don't often speak publicly about our specific members, but if they can think of a large one that sells a lot of tires along with everything else, and they're based in Canada, there's a very large one of those at Dartmouth Crossing. You can also think there's another very large one, exact same company, just over in Cole Harbour. They sell the same stuff. They're the same company, very similar in size, and yet under this proposal, they'd be charged a different tax rate. So, we just feel that there could be a better way to go about this. And then, of course, beyond that, if you look at some of these zones that are proposed to be taxed higher, some of the small retailers that are in there, obviously they wouldn't be taxed at the same higher rates due to the tiered system, which, it's an innovative way to look at it. But given the fact that most of them are renting, so some of those, landlords, they have a big swath of an area where they have a lot of different stores in them. If their costs are going up, then obviously the rents are going to go up as well. So, there's a lot of small independent retailers that are in some of those big box areas that would not benefit to the same extent as other small business retailers would. So we'd ask if there could be some consideration to not going forward with the significant increase at the highest levels. We feel that, obviously, it's not as popular for municipal politicians to do this, but the residential sector in HRM is continuing to boom. Lots of people coming in, using more of the services than a lot of the businesses do. If there's already increased revenue coming in there, we're just asking if the city could take a hard look at some of those areas to potentially increase revenues if need be. The last thing I just wanted to point out too is that we do feel, and it's something I've been working with our members on to try and get them to try and change the narrative, is that when times like this come around in a pandemic, it's as we're moving out, it is often easy to look at mass merchants and say, well, what do they contribute to the area? It's easy to put more tax on them because they don't. The profits simply leave the area. That's not true. there's a lot that these members do throughout the communities, but they really don't publicize much what they do for the areas that they serve. So, part of my job is to help get that message out there. All you have to do is, ask Feed Nova Scotia about who bankrolls a lot of the good work that they do. If you look at some of the environmental initiatives around the community, arts and culture donations, ask Laurie Arrington over at EMO and who steps up whenever there's disasters and emergency events around the province. The ones that come in with donations of food and water and sleeping bags and you name it, it's often these mass merchant retailers. Combine that with the fact that they do a lot over the course of the pandemic, and they didn't necessarily get credit for that either. There was a lot of inequity during the course of the pandemic due to the fact that government, meaning the provincial government, made a determination that only certain retailers could be open during that second wave, and there was a lot of backlash for that. And I think that's part of where some of this is coming from. That these big retailers should almost be penalized for the fact that some of them did very well during the course of the pandemic. But it needs to be pointed out that these folks, they made a lot of investments during that time. They all paid extra during that time to their employees, some for a shorter period of time, some made it permanent. A lot of them continued to support employees that had to be furloughed during that time if they weren't in a busier retail environment. So, a lot of steps have been taken. And, I know that's a bit of an aside, but I just wanted to help paint the picture that, we'd ask that, that there be a new conversation about this as this issue comes back to council in the fall. Targeting specific big box retailers. And I know, of course, with that, they mean big box, including industry, but it really does go after, big box retailers specifically. And so, we don't feel that's fair and equitable. And, I'll simply leave it at that. I don't want to simply read off everything that I provided in the letter, but I hope you'll all get a chance to read the letter. And, if there are questions, comments, then I will gladly take them. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jim, very much. Thank you for the information that you've presented. And as you indicated, it's always hard when you're looking at taxation. There's winners and losers. And so just wondering, have you done any kind of a survey of all of your membership as to how this taxation sits with them, the smaller retailers as well as the larger ones?
We haven't done a survey per se, just for the simple reason that, I don't think it wouldn't tell us anything that we don't already know. And that's why, I focused on where our concern is, but let's face it, if you're a small to mid-sized retailer, you're either ambivalent about the proposed tax change or you're generally okay with it. Nobody likes to pay more. And at least from what the proposal shows, there's a good chunk of these smaller retailers that would see their rates go down. And so that's good news. So again, I don't want to, turn this into a situation where I'm screaming from the rooftops that this is completely awful for all retailers, because it's not. We're simply focusing on the fact that it's definitely unfair from our perspective to look at one specific type of retailer and say, well, we're going to try and get more money out of you guys simply because we feel we can. Again, these are the retailers that are, for the most part, paying for their own solid waste collection. They're out in modern business parks. They're contributing. They're a draw to the area, so that the smaller retailers also benefit. And we just feel that it's not the most fair way that could be done to go about dealing with these bigger mass merchant retailers.
Thank you, Deputy.
Thank you, Mayor and Jim. Thank you for your presentation. I can understand your position, although I don't agree with it. What we've been trying to do as long as I've been on council, and so far the province hasn't allowed us to do what we'd like to do, is almost every level of government every bank, etc., has programs for small business. And what we aren't allowed to do yet, and this is why we have to look at this geographic approach, what we're not allowed to do yet, or haven't been able to get permission to do and haven't figured out the solution, is how to target small businesses based on their revenue, number of employees, square footage, these sorts of things. This is what we would like to do. Because I do believe that there are a number of small businesses who, if they see much more of a tax increase, particularly on main corridors like the Bedford Highway, Quinpool Road, Rickla Street, etc., will go under. I'm not convinced that a slight tax increase will drive a big box store out of business. And that's what we are challenged with doing within the constraints that we are allowed to do provincially. So while I understand your situation, I hope you understand our situation, that we are absolutely trying to help small businesses without putting any more burden on the residential taxpayer, which I can tell you, representing an area that is being developed, a lot of new people, a lot of new homes, a lot of new people coming here from other provinces and other countries. Our taxes are high compared to what they're used to. Now, 30% of that goes to the province when they get their tax bill from HRM, but that doesn't always register. So we are in a bit of a dilemma. Sorry for the barking dog. We are in a bit of a dilemma that we really need to find a way to help small businesses without putting additional burden on the residential taxpayer. So I'd appreciate if you had any suggestions on how we would do that, versus just the fact that you don't like the fact that some big box stores would potentially see increases. Thank you.
No, and I appreciate that. I thank you for that. Again, I'm not a tax expert by any means. So again, I'm not suggesting for a minute that, excuse me, the proposed tax increases are going to put the mass merchants out of business. I'm simply asking for folks to at least consider that, this is a very targeted approach to take more money out of very specific businesses when, they're already, in many respects, not responsible for the use of as many services as others. We agree that small businesses could use a break. I also agree that, again, it's not all of them that necessarily need it. There are some that choose to put their small business in the higher traffic and different areas of the city. And if they choose to go to, say, Spring Garden Road, all due respect to the folks there, but, you have to expect that you're going to pay a higher tax rate. That said, I don't disagree with all of that. It's that approach of stating that, well, even within the business parks and even within a Spring Garden Road's not a great example, but, we're going to help everybody else except you and you. And we just don't feel that that's overly fair to just be that laser specific that we're going after these specific businesses. Again, maybe I'm being overly simplistic, but when you look at it representing an industry association, and of course, like many other areas, the commercial rates are 2 to 3 times higher than the residential rates. The people keep moving into HRM, and I get it. They need to get the services that they want and need, but sometimes it's pretty easy to just say, well, let's go after the mass merchant as opposed to having to deal with the voter, when in fact it's the voter in the residential places that's using up the vast majority of these services. So again, it's not even so much the proposal, it's the back end of the proposal, the tier 5 or whatever it is, that specifically states, okay, at that level, we're going after you. And that's the part that a lot of our members look at and say, sure, it's not going to put me out of business, but it's really not fair. And especially given that a lot of my competitors are just outside of those areas.
Right. No, and I do understand that and I appreciate it. And I wish we didn't have to do it by geographic areas. I wish we could do it by size of business and income, square footage, et cetera. But so far, we're not allowed to do that. But we're going to keep asking. So thanks very much. I do appreciate your input.
No, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hensby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And then hello, Jim. How's it going?
Good. Good to see you again.
Big day tomorrow for everybody. But anyway, I just want to ask in regards to taxation by square footage. You know, instead of basing commercial taxes on the value of property wherever they're situated, wherever geography, urban downtown or rural parts of Halifax, do you think businesses rather prefer to pay taxes on a square footage like they pay their rents? You know, they pay a rent on a square footage basis. Why not have a taxation rate based on square footage of their business? That way, more reflective of if it's a big box store, they got more square footage. If it's a small business on downtown street, it's a smaller business, a smaller footprint. Any comment on that?
Again, it's always difficult, and it's going to sound like I'm fudging on the answer, but it's partially because we represent so many retailers. We're such a diverse industry association. I think you'd find some that would say, sure, I'd be willing to do that. But there would be others, if it was strictly based on square footage, that would say, well, it's not overly fair that, you know, I'm in an area that, you know, because of space needs, that I'm a little bit further out of the city, or whatever the reasons might be, versus the person that, you know, again, not to pick on Spring Garden Road, but versus the one that chooses to be on Spring Garden Road, where they get a certain clientele and customer base that maybe they don't get out in your area. And again, I mean that with all due respect, just simply pointing that out. So, you know, I think there's some real fairness issues that could rear their ugly head there as well. So it's not an easy answer. So again, I come back to the proposal that I've seen. I don't mind the proposal. You know, again, there's never any really good proposal when it comes to taxing businesses, but the proposal itself, I don't have a huge issue with. I think it does provide some fairness. I think it does allow for some tax breaks, and the tiers are pretty good. It's that top end where I just look at it and say, like, how could any industry association representing people that are in that category look at it and say, well, you know, that's a fair way to go about it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay. Jim, thank you very much. One thing I feel compelled to mention, this is not directed at you, but just in general, that, you know, when we talk about the residential commercial split on taxes, 20 years ago, 50% of all of our tax revenue came from commercial and 50% residential. Now it's only about 38%, I believe, commercial. So the residential have picked up a fair share of that over the last number of years. And of course, we want to be competitive on a commercial tax rate across the board. And a lot of the pressure that we had for this, Jim, came from the business improvement districts who were having a really hard time with taxation for their residents. But you bring a point of view that needs to be part of the conversation. And we thank you for taking the time. And have you any last words?
No, just again, I agree with your statement, Mr. Mayor. The only thing I'd point out is, of course, you know, the business improvement districts, they represent a certain constituency. Not to overly generalize, but for the most part, they don't represent too many big businesses. It's a lot of the, you know, the downtown smaller business, and they do a great job doing that. And we represent a lot of them too. But I just wanted to make sure that we at least got the point of view in for another part of our membership.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right, Jim, thank you. Mr. Jim
you.
Cormier, who is Atlantic Director of Retail Council of Canada. Thank you. Anybody on? Paul, are you just raising your hand to say goodbye, or?
Yes, that was it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jim. We'll move ahead, colleagues, to our items. The first information items brought forward, none. Reports 12.1.1 review of bylaw C 1100 respecting campaign financing. Who would like to take that one out? Ian, have you joined us for a reason? Did I miss something?
I'm just here to speak to this item if there's questions.
Okay. Awesome. Deputy Mayor, do you want to put that on the floor?
Or I can.
Paul, Councillor Russell, thank you.
Thank you. I move that the Executive Standing Committee accept this report and forward to Halifax Regional Council for information.
Happy to second, Tim.
Seconded by Deputy Mayor. Councillor Russell, anything on it?
I don't have anything on it. I had a look at it, and based on my perspective, there is no need to extend the number of days for the report. So I'm happy with this. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Ready for the question?
Question.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Thank you. 12.1.2, amend administrative order, the Youth Advisory Committee Administrative Order.
I can also put that on the floor if nobody has
Councillor
any objection.
Russell? Councillor
Thank
Russell?
you. I move that the Executive Standing Committee recommend that Halifax Regional Council 1 adopt the amendments to Administrative Order 2017-011-Gov, the Youth Advisory Committee Administrative Order as set out in Attachment 3 of the report, and 2, direct the Chief Administrative Officer to maintain the Youth Advisory Committee as an advisory committee to Regional Council through the Executive Standing Committee.
Second.
Second by Councillor Blackburn. Councillor Russell?
Thank you. I have nothing to add to this. I simply agree with the recommendation in the report.
Councillor Hensby's got his buddy with him, I see.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, he wants to get in on the action.
Well, it's the dog days of summer. All right, so on that motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those
Aye.
in opposition? 12.1.2 is carried. Colleagues, we have nothing from members of the standing committee updates, motions, none. In camera, I'm not sure if we need to.
So move the minutes of July the 12th in camera.
Councillor Hensby moves the minutes. Somebody want to second that?
Seconded, Councillor Russell.
Councillor Russell, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The minutes are approved. The other items, do we need to go in camera? We can go in camera if people wish, or we can, if it's nothing too controversial, we can deal with them here. It's whatever the will of council is.
I'll
Who do we-
test.
Councillor Hensby,
I'll test the will of executive committee to move personnel matter 14.2.1. Motion is that the in camera, in private, that Halifax Executive Standing Committee adopt the recommendations outlined in the private confidential staff report dated July 28, 2021, and 2, direct the staff report dated July 28, 2021 being maintained as private and confidential.
I'll second that.
second by Councillor Russell. Now, if anybody just don't feel that you have to approve this, if you wish to discuss it in camera, we can go in camera. We've got some time booked, but if it's not necessary, we can deal with it here. Ready for the question on 14.2.1? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 14.2.1 is passed. 14.2.2.
I can move that.
Councillor Russell?
Thank you. I move that the Executive Standing Committee 1 adopt the recommendations as outlined in the private and confidential staff report dated July 20, 2021, and 2, direct that the staff report dated July 20, 2021 be maintained as private and confidential.
Seconded.
Seconded by the deputy. Ready for the question? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? 14.2.2 is carried. Added items, we have none. Notices of motion. None. Public participation, we have nobody registered other than David's dog. So we have no public participation. Our next meeting will bring us even closer to Christmas. It is on September the 27th of 2021. Mr. Clerk, Deputy Clerk, or Legislative, have I missed anything?
I don't believe so, Mr. Mayor.
All right, I will accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Councilor Hensby. Thank you all very much. See you tomorrow at council. Thank you.
And if you haven't voted, get out and vote. Polls open at 8 o'clock. Meeting starts at 10.
Operators are standing by.
Yes. Get out and vote. Thank
Awesome.
you. Bye.
Thanks, folks.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
You.
Bye.